Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I have something a little bit different for you all, but I'm hoping that you all enjoy this kind of content and the theme because I definitely am hoping to do more of these sort of videos here in the coming year. So definitely do not be afraid to drop a comment down below and let me know what you would like to see next. But before I jump into the main topic for this video, I did want to speak briefly on the footage you are watching. I did this recording of at least a part of my coloring process for this piece that I called the Fae in the Tree. But unfortunately, because the piece is a little bit more on the spicy side of things, it's not exactly public YouTube appropriate. So there will be a full uncensored version of this video or of the footage available on my Patreon, which you can find via the links down in the description. I primarily used watercolor for this piece, but of course I always do a bit of mixed media and you'll see that in the clips. Now let's get into the topic for this video, which is how can you recognize when our mischievous neighbors are around? AKA the Fae, the fairies, the good folk, the fair folk, whatever term that you want to use that's appropriate to your tradition and to your beliefs, go for it. But before we start jumping into the list of the info that I found, let me go ahead and do some disclaimers here. So first off, some of the signs that I talk about here can also relate to other types of phenomena. So the first key to really recognizing, is it's the Fae that you're interacting with, is going to be through your intuition. So you have to have good trust in your intuition and work with it regularly to understand, the different beings and energies that you can encounter, because your first sense is really going to be your best defense, depending on what you're dealing with. So, and again, I will mention that me and my Pisces twin, if you know Gossamer Dreams and some of the tarot videos that I've done, we have a podcast that we do on Patreon, and we have talked, multiple times about sort of your intuition, strengthening your psychic powers. So there are podcasts that we kind of delve onto that topic if you guys are interested in learning and finding out more information about that. Again, links are in the description. So, secondly, if your main image of, the Fae, the fairies, however you want to put it, comes from Disney or, this child book idea of what a fairy is, you really need to kind of banish that idea from your mind, because the Fae really do encompass a very wide net of various creatures, and many are very, kind of unexplainable and can be terrifying even. So you just need to, again, do your research. I also would say, do not go and demand things from the Fae. They are, very much of their own will. They live beside us in the other realms. So really it's about, building a mutual relationship of receptivity with these energies. So again, read up on, the various different lores and stories from all the different cultures, because pretty much every culture has some form of the Fae present. So select and, choose and research what fits for you and your particular practice. But, especially do this before you go and try to work with, these kind of beings, because, you want to just be respectful. And this honestly goes for any kind of spirit and deity. So with my two disclaimers out of the way, let's get into the signs that the Fae are around. Well, they're actually always around us, whether you realize it or not, because again, as I mentioned, they live beside us. But they often choose, when we get to view them and when we get to interact with them. So collectively, no matter kind of where you go and what you look at, you're going to really see a lot of the same kind of like synchronicities and signs pop up in various different forms of information and research that you do. At least that's what I definitely saw. So, of course, if I missed anything here in my list, I definitely encourage you guys to let me know down in the comments, and also tell me about your own personal experiences with these kind of beings. What happened? How did you know? I will, of course, mention a little bit of my own experiences as I go through the list. So let's jump into this. So, number 1. You may see motion in your peripheral vision that, might look very shiny. It might be flashing. It could be flickering lights. You especially could see like flickering spheres of light or orbs. And this can happen out in nature, but it can also occur in your house too, because I definitely had this happen. I've had this actually happen multiple times throughout my life. There was one significant time that happened when I was a child that really just blew my mind. You may even capture these orbs and these lights on camera too, so pay attention when you're taking photos. There will also be, kind of a sort of magical play of light and shadows, especially when you are out in nature, when they are around. You also, when you pair that with really opening up your senses and your intuition, you should definitely get a very strong sense of, the good folk around you. You may even feel like you are being watched, and that is a common kind of sign in synchronicities. You might feel watched, but granted, again, use your best your best judgment about that. If you feel like you're being watched in the woods, need I say more on that? So number 2, and this one is a big one, definitely for all of my clairaudient people out there, because when the fae are around, you may hear like sourceless music, even kind of like very wild sounding music, or have very strange songs stuck in your head. You could hear things literally like bells, chimes, tapping, banging, laughter, or even like singing. And again, all of these sounds are seemingly coming from no specific source. Like you cannot pinpoint where you're hearing it. You just are. I've saw some people have described that this happens, at night, which again, similarly, this can kind of line up with some of the stories that you hear about poltergeist or ghost activity as well. So keep that in mind. And the music that you might hear might come more in the form of like something like beats and tones than what we would as like humans would think of as like our mainstream music. Another thing to also pay attention to is that birds and other animals may also be, extremely active in singing or making sounds along with the fae, or when the fae are around. So pay attention to that. Another thing that could definitely happen for point 3 is you could smell an overwhelming scent of things like flowers or something else that's like very sweet in nature. And again, these are things that you're smelling with no clear source to them. So there's like no flowers around. There's nothing that would make sense to have that sweet smell, and you just suddenly have it happen. Again, another similar case, some people have said this about, suddenly you randomly smell roses, and that could have something to do with a spirit being around. So there could be crossover here. The fourth point here is you might have a sense of warmth on your skin when the fae come in close contact with you or your aura. You could even feel like tiny vibrations of energy on your body, tingling or tickling. Again, but keep in mind, it just depends on, how sensitive of a person you are. Also keep in mind that, very mischievous fae or even angry ones could also choose to do things like pull your hair, knot your hair, or even push or trip you. So again, just trust your intuition and what you feel the intent is behind those actions. Number 5, we have definitely a lot of environmental things to take note of. So again, just be very aware of your surroundings always. So first, of course, is a fairy ring. When you see it and you find a fairy ring, which again, this is not just limited to mushrooms. This can be literally anything that you stumble across, such as flowers in a circle, grasses, or like a bare kind of circle area of grasses, rocks, etc. Awareness in nature is everything. And obviously, don't just assume any circle you find is a fairy circle. They can certainly be man-made too, and for, magical purposes. So you might still feel a magical energy around these circles, but just be aware. There can definitely be a certain sense of calm or a magical feeling in the environment when the fae are present. Even the breeze can start to act odd, especially when the fae are on the move. So again, pay attention to the way, especially leaves may float on the wind or interact with the space around you. Some people say that when the fae are near, you could start to feel a little bit more childlike or happy, or even just kind of carefree. There's definitely, you can maybe even have more of a pep in your step. And there's even some sources saying that you'll feel a stronger affinity with all that surrounds you and gain a deeper appreciation for even the smallest of things that you see, the plants, the animals, all of it becomes you become hypersensitive to it in a sense. The plants will certainly feel more alive, which is also to say that, plants will likely grow better or even out of the blue when fae are present, or the fae energy is particularly strong. And on that point, it can also go in the opposite sense, I would say, if the fae are pissed off or feel insulted or mistreated. So they might even on purposely kill plants, or things, or I should reword that. They're not going to try to kill natural plants that are there. It's more so if you are trying to plant or grow something, they might fuck with your plants that you're trying to grow, especially if you are overstepping a boundary that they have set. So again, relationship, keep that in mind. 6th point, and this is one of my favorites, and I think this is probably a favorite for a lot of people when it comes to these experiences, is pets. Some sources especially call out cats will act strangely, and you might notice them playing with nothing, or and this one has happened so many times to me, they might start staring very oddly and seem like they're tracking something, moving through your house or through your space with their eyes, but you certainly cannot see anything. So you're kind of standing there tripping out while your animal is staring and following something. You're like, what are you doing? It's really, really creepy when that happens. But yes, our animal familiars are so sensitive to the unseen. But not just them. Wild animals and insects will be definitely more active or behave uniquely. And if you are especially in tune with your magic and the fae and nature, you may notice how wild animals will seem to be attracted more to your space than anywhere else. I've definitely had this happen my whole life. Wild animals will just be very attracted to my home or wherever, I'm staying or my family's staying. And, they'll come in the yard. They feel very safe in that kind of space. And even had it happen where a lot of wild animals have chosen to come to, the backyard to pass away. Because again, it feels like a safe space, and most likely a space that is, connected to that presence of the fae being there. So number 7, you could have very vivid or interesting dreams filled with, bright colors, strange music, or, very sweet or unusual foods. And these dreams are being triggered by the fae. You could even have the fae appearing in your dream. You will likely dream of unusual places and environments. If you are lucky, you might even be taught things in your dreams by the fae. I definitely know I have certainly had lots of encounters in my dreams with the fae, the fair ones. And those have definitely been some of my most eye-opening and wildest dreams that I've had. And finally, we come to point number 8. So, last but not least, this is personally one of my favorites because both me and my Pisces twin have talked a ton about our experiences with this on our podcast. And that is the fact that you are definitely going to have items disappear, but hopefully reappear if you're lucky, in the strangest of fucking ways. The fae especially love to do this with jewelry, crystals, or, other shiny objects, but really any kind of small object is fair game. Even larger items could go missing. You may notice that objects are clearly being moved. Some people have especially noticed shoes being moved from one place to another. I personally haven't really experienced that one, I just really haven't noticed that. Now, that is to say, the fae don't always just take things. They can also leave random gifts that show up in your house or your yard. But always a really good rule of thumb when you are working with the fae and when they do things like that, if they leave you a gift, you should definitely return the favor to stay in that good relationship with them. So yeah, I've had things weirdly go missing. There's a certain area of my house that it seems extremely active for this kind of encounters, because I'm not the only one who's lost things in this particular part of the house, which is the pantry, where, again, storing a lot of food items, a lot of different food items, which definitely seems like a prime kind of fairy hideout. It's even under the stairs of all places. It's really wild. Again, talked more in depth about those encounters on the podcasts. But yeah, so those are some of the main signs that, the fae could be around you. Of course, I would love to know what you all have experienced when it comes to, the fae down in the comments. Have you guys experienced any of these types of, phenomenon or, synchronicities, however you want to kind of word these different events? And, as always, I thank you for watching and for all of your support, and a special thank you to my patrons who greatly help in the creation of more content like this. So if you would like to learn more about, again, my Patreon or check out any of my other social media to show your support, it will all be linked in the description below. And so I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.